Hi, this is Arvin Vohra, and I'm going to briefly talk about why the Vohra method uses hands-on learning instead of lecture-based learning. See, when you have a lecture-based class, that class has to go at some pace. And that pace is going to be too fast for some students, leaving them confused, and too slow for other students, leaving them bored. And maybe if you're lucky, it's going to be the exact right pace for one student in the class. When you have hands-on learning, what that does is it allows students to have a certain level of flexibility in their pacing. So some students can take a little bit longer if they need to, and some students can just finish more quickly if they're able to. The advantage is especially strong for students who just need a little bit of extra time. For example, let's say you're teaching factoring. You plan to teach that factoring portion in 10 minutes. There might be a student who just needed 11 minutes and he would have gotten it perfectly. But because you only gave him 10 minutes, he feels now uncomfortable, confused, and underconfident with that information. So what the Vohra method does is it takes all those topics and converts them to these hands-on worksheet tutorials. Now the question is, where do these worksheet tutorials come from? Like, how are they developed in the first place? And they were actually developed through years of tutoring. What I did is I first taught factoring to 10 students, then 100 students, then 1,000 students, until I really knew exactly the best way to teach factoring. And I did the same thing with logic, with analyzing assumptions, and teaching the inverse and the converse and the contrapositive, and with adding fractions. And each one of those areas I built into a worksheet. And so the student basically goes through essentially a written equivalent of a one-on-one tutoring session, but unlike a one-on-one tutoring session, which is primarily auditory, he now has this visual thing that he can just look at and take as long to read as he wants to. Whereas even when you're tutoring, you're still speaking at some pace, which might be too fast or too slow. And of course, an experienced tutor will moderate that. But with a tutorial, with a worksheet tutorial, the student can adjust that pace to exactly what's perfect for him. He can pause exactly where he needs to pause. And the advantage of that is that it allows them to develop a very high level of confidence and a very high level of competence with the subject that he's studying, whether it's a math subject or physics or something related to SAT or reading comprehension. It really allows them to gain a high degree of mastery of the information.